received a BA in youth work. She loves football and music. Welcome, Sue.
Wow. Thank you, Desley. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank
Yeah,
you. It's lovely to be here. You've certainly had some life experience, haven't you, Sue?
yeah, just listening to that intro. Yeah, I have had many, not all good, but I think all the experiences in your life lead you to be who you become ultimately. And when I think of that, I'm happy where I am in my life at this present time. My family, my health is relatively good, and I live in a beautiful part of the country. And what more, like I'm happy. I'm not rich by no means, battler, but I don't need money to be happy either.
No, it is a. I answer a lot of questions on Quora.com, and one of the questions that I received from a young person was, "Do I need to be rich to be happy?" And basically, my response was no. um, and if you've got friends and social networks and family and people who support you, you can keep a roof over your head, food on the table,
that's really, that's all
then
you
you're
need.
rich indeed.
Yes, of course. All this, I mean, what do the zeros at the end of your bank account really do? I mean, sure, the obvious stuff about travel and power and all that, but at the end of the day, why do you need all that? Why do you need that to be a good human? Because that kind of is, in my mind, is opposite to people use their power. I mean, look at our government, for heaven's sake. That's just absolutely horrendous what's going on. And I am such a proud Aussie, Olympic, anything where Australia is, I'm hand on heart every time I hear our anthem. But I'm absolutely appalled at what's going on in our country, how we've been robbed, our social rights, our freedoms, the choices, and it's all greed and power that's behind it. Benefits no one, but the top 1%. Desley, why do 1%ers control our lives? Either end.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
like,
it's interesting, isn't it?
yeah,
It's the 1% of people receiving welfare or people receiving a Centrelink benefit who may be trying to beat the system. It's a kind way of putting it. And so they government come down with, or Centrelink come down with harsher rules for the other 99% at one end, as you say. And then you've got the 1%ers in the wealth category, and a portion of the 1% of that 1% are the power hungry, power mongers. Yeah, and I find it fascinating when you talk about this current government. Uh, Personally, I think Menzies would be turning over in his grave as to what the Liberal Party, National Liberal Party now stands for. It's not about the rights of the individual. They keep talking about their broad church. Well, it's a weird church, if you ask me. But then that's my opinion, for my 2 cents worth. But it's not that broad at all, because unless look at the politician, Tasmanian politician who crossed the floor the other day in Parliament to defeat a government bill. Oh, that's right. She wanted the ICAC bill,
Yeah.
And basically within hours, she was dragged before Scotty at marketing office. And I'm being polite there with Scotty at marketing because that's not the term we use in my area for him, I can assure you. But, you know, we live in a new era and what we have to be very careful what we say on social media. But she was dragged before him. Oh, it was all very polite and everything else like that. But when they said who was actually in attendance at that meeting, here's this poor one backbencher with these heavyweights all around her, probably
Exactly.
getting, even if it was polite, a dressing down of the First Order for daring to cross the floor and having a different opinion.
Exactly. I mean, I'm a part of a group that's been battling the cashless debit card, and Bridget actually, oddly enough, voted for that horrendous piece of legislation that so many people are just hurting, are desperate. People are actually, I mean, I don't know who your audience is, and I don't want to, you know, people are dying as a result of this card. It is no good government would ever in their right mind consider privatizing a welfare system, trying to make money off the poorest in your land, in our country. That is just, that's lunacy. How? Anyway, back to Bridget, she voted with him. And now, as you say, you know, to be confronted not only by the master, but his puppets as well, as a, you know, terrifying. I mean, I'd hate, you know, I've been in some situations, and honestly, I'd be scared witless that, first of all, you're called in to speak to the master, but then walk in and see, oh, lordy, you know, Maurice Payne, I think it was, and was it Dutton? No,
Dutton, I think it was Dutton.
yeah, and you know, I mean, he scares everybody at the best of time. The man's a warmonger, he's a lunatic. He was not very well respected when he was in the police force, and he got an interesting parting gift from his fellow officers when he left. So, you know, there was a rumor going around, I don't know whether it's true or not, but, you know, there was a rumor going around that Mr. Dutton actually took a number of Aboriginal boys for a drive into the outback and removed their shoes. These are 3 boys, the oldest was 7, removed their shoes and left them in the bush to find their own way back. You know, you don't, no human does that to kids either, not a good human. And so this boy is confronted by Maurice Payne, who was a part of the whole cover-up on Brittany, the whole rape. So you've got her, and then you've got Dutton, and then you've got the master. Like, I really, at that moment, I did feel sorry for Bridget Archer. You know,
yes, and she's an interesting lady, from what I can understand. I find it interesting, you know, talking about politics, but also picking up on the No Cashless Debit Card Australia, or the Indu card. The stripping away of human, consumer and legal rights and protections has been stealth in the making over the past number of years. And it'd be nice if she actually crossed the floor on that and actually voted with Julian Hill with his bill to, you know, the federal Labor MP for not for Richmond. He's in Victoria, so who's I'm thinking of Justine Elliott, who is
And
also
you'll,
supporting that bill.
yeah,
But getting,
Julian,
yeah, Julian Hill, he's from Victoria. I
yeah,
can't quite, I have interviewed him. I can't quite remember what electorate he is in now. But
very
the total stripping away of rights and consumer rights under all the legal protections that ordinary everyday Australians have, people in these so-called trial sites, which, you know, this is a never-ending trial, have had stripped away from them. The privatisation, as you say, of welfare and putting it into hands of a private company to manage, very poorly, I might add.
yeah, make a
Poorly.
profit on
The,
this.
the story, profiteering.
Yes, that's the key. It's not, they're not there to provide a service for anybody. Their main objective, like any private enterprise, is to make money.
Yeah.
That's their line. And so to them, it doesn't matter whether you can feed your kids tonight or whether you can pay your rent. Well, there's been so many cases where Inju have failed to pay people's rents and has led to them becoming homeless. And not only are they made homeless, but then Services Australia has the gall to threaten their children by statements like, oh, well, if you're going to be homeless, we'll take your kids. Really? What is this? We're back to have we learned nothing from the stolen generation? This is the worst government in the life of this country. And, you know, there is not one good thing. And trust me, I've asked myself many times over the last 3 years, there's not one good thing that has come from this government.
I'm going to ask you a question. You in your intro, you know, you've talked about that you've experienced domestic violence, which is horrendous. Sorry?
This card is exactly that, but on a large scale. Now, yes, I have experienced, they were long, my first relationship, he was my husband. That was, I always believed my mum's way of saving me from repeated rape by my stepfather was to send me off with this bloke who was 11 years older than me. And I always believed, well, I believed that for a long time. So I spent the next 11 years birthing 3 children and being beaten from pillar to post, and where I had to account for every moment of my time and every cent that I was ever given. And this is exactly that. It was control on every level. You know, where I shopped, how much I spent, where, you know, what bills were paid, what I bought for my kids and where I bought it from. And if you didn't, you know, if you crossed the boundary, well, you got beaten, or, you know, this is just total control. And that resulted, it took 11 years, but it resulted in me admitting myself into a mental hospital to recover because I'd had a complete breakdown.
Yeah.
I had been beat, and there was no shelters back then.
Yeah.
No, you know, nobody, I mean, domestic violence was certainly there, but you called the police and the police would come, they'd take him out in the yard and they'd have a little chat with him, and he promises to be a good boy, and off they go. And then he comes back in and beats the crap out of you harder. So you don't report it. You just live with this hell. And this card, when I think of this card, that is exactly how I feel about this card.
Yeah.
And that's what it does. It oppresses people. It takes away your power to choose. That is our basic freedom. We have will. and we have the right to exercise our will of choice.
Yeah.
as
And that
humans.
was the question I was going to ask you is that if we go back to, those 11 years and the government had the cashless debit card in at that stage, do you consider that you would ever be able to exit that domestic violence situation?
No, because there was nothing. The only payment that was around at that time was the widow's pension.
Yeah.
There was and so when I left, finally, with him chasing me with a gun, all I had was what was in my handbag at the time.
Right.
And so I went to a police station, caught a bus and went to a police station a long way from where I lived. And it was a half screen, half solid door. No, it was too early for the to be open. And so I squatted down the door. I was absolutely terrified that he'd find me. And for this part of the police station to open. And they set me up to a refuge. And in them days, if you went to a refuge, that was a really that police station rang another police station, who then rang a worker, who then decided where we were to meet. And so the police would take me to a meeting point, and then the person would take me to wherever the refuge was for women's safety, obviously, but things were very different then. And this is early 70s I'm talking about. And and I was so petrified that he'd find me. When I finally went to Centrelink, and they had nothing to offer me. And then a bigger officer came out, and they said maybe I'd qualify for the widow's pension. So that's what I got. It was $180 a fortnight. I had 3 young children, and my rent was 120, and that's what we lived on for. And then he stalked me constantly, and oh god, it was But no, that was
Horrible.
the payment we had.
But from what I understand, I'm talking, with the cashless debit card, that basically because people can't pay for motel rooms, because if they can't get into a refuge or a shelter, and they've got nowhere to go, they can't pay for a motel room on the Indue card. They can't pay for a caravan park, particularly if it's a mixed, sells alcohol in their dining area or something like that, which not too many do, but some do. But there seems to be a blanket ban against caravan parks. They're also, from what I understand, saying to women who are wanting to flee domestic violence, well, you've got to go into a card area, otherwise we'll take your kids off you. So they're forced onto this card in order to get to be, as you say, more abused from a financial, mental and emotional perspective. That just continues the cycle of abuse. But they're not given any real choice. And then you've got Anne Ruston saying, the Minister for Women's Safety, domestic violence is bad and we want to look after women. Yeah, she's quite happy for women to be on the Indue card. I can't marry up the concept. I don't know how. Does she have different compartments in her head? This is to do with that, but this doesn't cross over to this.
No, I mean, come on, really, where does she go to bed at night? I don't know. Does she live in the real world? Because it's certainly, like you said, it just doesn't. Does she think we're all stupid and just because she's a dummy that, you know, we're going to be fooled by this, that we can't see, we can't, like, that's just, I find that extremely offensive and rude from her, that she would think we would buy that.
Mm.
You know, and what they're, you know, that this government has no regard for women of this country, and that a woman is actually selling other women into abuse is
Yes.
intolerable.
Yes. Actually, I hadn't thought about it from that perspective, but you're right. She, being a female, she's actually promoting
Domestic violence.
domestic
She's
violence, or promoting a form of abuse to
of
be
women.
of women,
Yes.
or further trauma
Yep.
and further violence against women who are fleeing violence.
Yep.
Mm,
Take them out of the
very good
pot,
point.
throw them into the frying pan is about what they're doing with this whole threat of the cashless debit card. It helps nobody in no way. Anything that impedes on your free will, your choice, is not a good thing. It's not a good thing.
But
No,
this
you
is
know,
where it's at odds with the Liberal Party philosophy of the rights of the individual and the rights of the individual to choose. And yet they've come out with one of the most draconian policies
you know,
that any Australian government, apart from the stolen generation and maybe the White Australia policy, has ever inflicted on its own citizens.
yeah, by far. This is just, and the fact that, you know, I always thought that we were, you know, I lived through the Whitlam era, so I know what happened there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, God, you know, God may save the Queen, but he'll never save the Governor General. Was that not the line that was used
Yes.
back? Excuse me, the whole bloody lot of the NLP Parliament, NLP Nats Parliament, all should be tossed out. I thought, based on what happened then, why are they still there? I keep asking. I've tried to ask Mr. Albanese's office. You're the leader of the opposition. Why is he still there? I've tried to ask the Governor General's office. What's a Governor General these days? What are his powers? What are his roles? In all these 3 years of all this destruction, we have not heard from our Governor General at all. So why do we employ him? Why do we pay him money?
Mm.
You know, like, it seems that there's one set of rules for one government and nothing, you know, a completely different set for the opposition. This is crap. This would never have washed with Labor. Labor sneezes and they're ousted. The NLP half murders the bloody country and they're heroes. Excuse me?
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? And people just keep, swallowing this. I don't think that lately I've been actually thinking, you know, what kind of Australia are we? Are we still the, you know, true blue? Do we still stand by our mates? You know, I think we are, the core of us is, but the top end is not pulling the line and therefore dragging the rest of us down with it. You know, this is not the country that every kid deserves an equal opportunity at an education and a life. Every human deserves an opportunity, a chance at life. And anything that you could possibly do to further that is a good thing. And the rest is just rubbish.
Yeah.
You know, all this wage theft. Excuse me, excuse my language, dickhead. They're your workers. They work for you. You make money, everybody's happy. Oh, you're not happy? You want to steal their wages too? Oh, now we're on a, you know, what kind of boss does that? Now, this is, people are so against the union. Like, really, people, you have contents insurance, you have car insurance, boat insurance, caravan insurance, health insurance, every other insurance on the planet that you could possibly have, you've probably got it, except for one, your bloody work insurance. Where's your work insurance? That's what the union is.
Mm.
They're there for you at work. They're your insurance against wage theft, you know, against bullying at work, sexual assault at work, you know, all those things. That's your insurance policy. But no one gives a crap these days. Unions are so bad mouthed. Mate, if it wasn't for the frigging unions, you'd still be working 16-hour shifts and being paid a penny, and you go home to your family and try and feed them and pay the rent.
Yes,
mean,
and talk about, you know, unions, and we'll come to that in another discussion, and that sort of thing, but it's good to raise it. But talking about unions and cost of living and wage theft, which seems to be every other day, some big companies coming out saying they're having to back pay their workers due to a mistake, yeah, which is rather interesting. It seems to be very, very prevalent. But the cost of living and the wage stagnation that we've had in this country now for quite a number of years, we don't have affordable housing. I was reading an article the other day, only yesterday, you know, basically there's so much money that now has to be poured into social housing and affordable housing and building affordable homes, because people increasingly people are becoming homeless.
Oh, yes. It's the growth industry, isn't it? In this
Yes,
country?
it absolutely is growth industry. Or they're living, I heard of one mum, I forget how many children she had, was living, this was in Sydney, and it was basically like a one room kind of garage shed,
Yeah.
just to have a roof over her head and put a roof over the head of the children.
Yep.
You know, because she couldn't afford even a 2-bedroom. I don't know how many children she had, but she couldn't even afford a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment.
Well,
you know, so
here in
it's getting worse, isn't it?
Oh, by a long shot. Here in Tassie now, every day I thank myself and whatever that I own my own home, because being a carer and on the carer's payment, I would be homeless. There's no way on what I receive a fortnight would I be able to pay the current rents and my medication and sustain myself. I just couldn't. The house next door to me, a year and a half ago, my girlfriend lived in there. The rent was $275 a week. That house today is $450 a week.
Yeah.
Nothing changed, no upgrades or nothing, not a thing, but the rent has gone up $175 a week. Now, Desley, I don't know too many employed people that could afford to pay $450 a week. Those on payments, Social Security, there's no way. Someone's going hungry. Someone's going without so that they can pay their rent, or they end up homeless. And there are so many of them. Mums and kids and mums and dads and kids, dads and kids. The kids, the word that keeps coming up is kids. Leslie, this is our goddamn future.
Mm,
You know, what are we doing to our kids?
mm,
No child should experience that kind of living unless you choose to go camping for a week,
mm.
right? You don't live like that. You cannot go to school and do what's required of you at school if you don't have a full belly, if you're not rested. It doesn't happen. You know, you need to be fed, and a government that would actually allow this, would actually encourage this.
Mm.
It's not a government. A wise friend said to me once, this Prime Minister is a half-baked dictator.
Yes.
And the more I think about that, the more I believe that he truly is. And
Uh,
if he gets in next term, he won't be half-baked.
no, I've said for a little while as well that this government is a half-baked dictatorship. It's baking. It's in the oven. It's still baking.
Oh, yes.
It's still baking. But the problem, but they're doing it by stealth, and they're doing it bit by bit. But they're doing it by stealth. But in actual fact, it's basically a half-baked dictatorship.
Oh, it is for sure. And you look at the things that have changed and what they are changing. You know, even the simplest of things like the voting, they're changing the manner that you can do that now, just obviously to suit their own gain. But they based it on the American system, which is rather stupid because here we only go to vote once because we have to, because if we don't, we get fines, right?
Mm.
And then most of them, I don't, but a lot of people actually will draw penises or go pies on their ballot paper or, you know, donkey votes. That's what we don't go from one electorate to another to vote, you know.
And
So therefore, this change is, he'd be better off focused on things like the donkey votes, which are real.
yes,
You know, here in Tassie last election, 90, well, there should have been 90,000 donkey votes
mm,
because the woman that stood for the Liberal Party actually stood as an independent,
mm.
but her name appeared on the green paper under the LNP banner.
It's
And
interesting. It's interesting that you mention that because in New South Wales we have our local council elections, and that's happening on the 4th of December. And I've got the ballot papers already, for the council elections. And what they've clearly marked on there, and what they've actually said in an article, is that the Liberal Party members are standing as independents in the local council elections. They're not standing as a representative of the Liberal Party. Now, that's happening all over the state in New South Wales in these local council elections. So is the LNP so on the nose that local pollies who say they're staunch Liberals will not stand behind their party as a party, and they're standing as independents, which actually confuses voters.
yeah,
I've heard so much, even particularly with the upcoming federal election, vote independent, don't vote Liberal or Labor, vote independent. And
yeah,
as we say, know where your votes are going to, which party, your preferences, the independents. They are absolutely confusing the issue in
yeah,
these local government elections because they're standing as independents and
yeah.
not as
You know
I'm
that
from the Liberal Party.
if you're well, this is where the whole ID thing could actually be of some benefit to someone, is if they did that. I mean, if you're assigned to a party, if you've signed up to a party that you belong to, then that's where you are, isn't it? or do you get to just ditch that when it suits you?
Well, obviously they're ditching it. The liberal people are, you know, the Liberal pollies are ditching the LNP and they're standing as independents in all the different LGAs, local government areas, in the local elections. And I find that actually a very fascinating turn of politics, because I suspect, because of what's happening on the federal level, not so much on the state level, we have a Liberal National Party government here in New South Wales, but not so much there. But what's happening on federal is obviously, you know, when they talk about that trickle down effect for economics,
well,
obviously it's trickling down, and they're not prepared to stand as a Liberal Party member and be elected as a Liberal Party member in the local government elections. So that I find very, very fascinating.
I haven't heard that, but that's very interesting. What message are they sending?
Well, see, the problem is when you vote, and that when you look at the form, they're all independents. You have no idea who they're
aligned with.
Who they're really aligned with, you know, unless you and I was talking to a neighbour of mine who was asking, and I said, yeah, I've got the papers and everything like that. And I say, there's only one person I know here, and that's the person in the local, you know, in the area I live in, who's been a councillor for ever since I've been living in the area. And I've actually met her, you know what I mean? And that's the only reason I said, anybody else, I said, I have no idea who they are.
Yeah.
Never, because they don't knock on our doors. They don't knock and say, hello, I'm such and such, and I, you know what I mean? And this sort of thing. But I find it fascinating that they're hiding behind independence. The Liberal Party candidates are hiding behind independence rather than for what they really stand for.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, if you look at the current situation and that, you kind of think, oh, you'd be a bit skeptical but then if it stands on its own and they're actually sending a message, we don't want to associate with what's going on, then that's a different scenario, and that could be a good thing. But it all lies in who they're actually preferencing, where their loyalties actually lie at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, it comes down to how they're going to vote, or what their thinking is, or whether they're pro-development or, you know, and everything like that. But getting away from politics for a minute, and you're like me, we could talk politics till the cows come home and even beyond. So, you know.
And went and,
But question I want to ask you, because I know that Tasmania doesn't have the cashless debit card.
No.
And well, first off, how did you get involved in the actual No Cashless Debit Card Australia movement? And B, what do you believe, if the LNP does roll it out across the country to all Centrelink recipients, how do you feel it would impact you personally and your lifestyle?
Right, okay. Well, that's easy, Desley, actually. What I heard our Prime Muppet, excuse me, I'll call him.
Excuse me.
I heard our Prime Muppet just after he was elected, on some interview or another, talking about the trials. I wasn't too familiar what was going on, but I heard him say that it would be something that he would like to put across all Australian recipients, blanket approach on this cashless debit card. And I thought, no way. my first reaction was fear, because control, that's simply what it is. It's just control and terror. But anyway, so that was, I then started talking to my friends about it, reading about it, finding out, about the trial areas and stuff. And I'd been doing this for probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years. And then I came across Catherine's post. And so I spoke to Catherine, and she asked me to jump on board, and I'd followed her a little bit. And I thought, yeah, this is, so I spoke to her, and she brought me in on board. And yeah, from the minute I heard about it, I was distressed, because there is no good in this card. It will not ever work for anybody. Just keep in mind that Indue is there to make money. They're making money off your money. That's a lose-lose situation for you, right? It's just that simple. When you throw profits, and we look around, a company isn't going to just sit there and go, oh, well, we didn't make that much this year. What can we do? It'll be your money that'll be, you will lose out in the long run. There'll be cuts to you so that their profit, because that's where their money comes from, right? They're not a mixed business. They grow and you don't. And that absolutely terrifies me. We've seen examples. I know through the no cashless debit card people and events that, it doesn't work, people. A young woman could go to a bottle and buy alcohol, not a problem. It passed. It went through, approved. Go to the supermarket next door and, oh no, decline. The humility that goes with that, the humiliation that goes with that. And you're looked at differently. Now, I lived through the 70s where being a single mum was not something that anybody liked. You were labelled a trollop, or it doesn't matter that you just spent 11 years getting the shit beat out of you, that you're a slut because you are a single mother. You're easy. No one wants to know you. No one wants to employ you, blah, blah. That's you. Here we go, move forward, whatever years it's been, and we have the cashless debit card. So not only are people suspecting that you're a trollop or whatever, now they look at the minute you open your wallet and pull out your card, they go, oh shit, a junkie. We're not junkies. I'm not a junkie. I don't have a gambling addiction. I'm not an alcoholic either. So what the hell? And there are many out there that are on the card in that same situation. And if you spread this across the board, our children will miss out, because no camps, no school photos, and no, my kids used to love their lunch order once a week. That was their highlight for the week. No lunch orders, unless it comes out of your 20%. Forget it. It ain't happening, right? And camps, unless, again, it comes out of your 20%, forget it. Kids not having camp, not having photos, not being able to duck into the milk bar at the end after school and get an ice block on a summer's day on the way home. To not be able to take your kids to a school fair. And we know they do fairs to raise money for the school. But you can't take your kids there, because unless it comes out of your 20%, well, stiff titties, don't go. And then on top of all of that, no garage sales, no, if something breaks down, you want to replace it, you've got to get permission. Here we go, choice, right? You've got to ring up Indue and go, yeah, I need, my fridge blew up. I've got to keep the milk cold for the little one. Can I get a fridge? I've seen one on Gumtree. Can I get the money, please? I know. You got to fill in goddamn forms and seek their approval and jump through hoops and all the rest of the crap, by which stage the fridge is gone and your kid's milk is curdled. I mean, what is the point of it? You know, why do I need to ask you to buy a goddamn fridge? If I am a normal adult, I have a functioning brain, I can decide if I need a new fridge, and I can decide where I get it from, who I'll pay to get it. That's my choice. You have no right to tell me that or anything else. You have no right to control a penny of what is my payment that was given to me many, many, many years ago. It was given to people many years ago, like the pensioners. You know, that was one of the first payments that was introduced in this country. And now they want to claim it. It's not yours. You're on welfare. Oh, you tax rip-off, you burden on the taxpayer. Excuse me, if you go on who's the burden on the taxpayer, then you guys need to put your bloody names on the cashless debit card, because you're the great wasters.
But the ironic thing is there, Sue, is I was speaking to Julian Hill about that, and basically I was saying to him, well, why aren't politicians on the cashless debit card? They're receiving a government handout or a payment. Okay, they pay tax, but so do we. Anyone on a benefit pays tax indirectly, unless it's apart from if they work, they may also end up paying tax that way. And he said, he got a lot of feedback on that and got asked that question quite a lot. So he decided, okay, you can voluntarily go on the card. I'll volunteer to go on the card.
Yeah.
And evidently they realised he was a politician, and they decided to be fairly polite to him, the Hindu people, which is a little bit different to what cardholders seem to receive on a phone call. And they tried to work it all out, and then they came back and said, oh, I'm sorry, we're not taking people, we've stopped the voluntary process. We're not taking people voluntary onto the card. So he couldn't actually get on the card.
It was never voluntary to start with, not that one anyway.
But the thing is that if my argument is that if the government is going to go for Centrelink recipients of all the different types of benefits, including the age pension, which I will say first up, that probably will be last on the list to be brought on board. But they are written into the legislation, and I've got a little question about that for you in a minute. Then, because we're receiving taxpayers' dollars, well, politicians are receiving taxpayers' dollars. Doesn't it also come out of general revenue, their wages? So basically, if you're going to do that, then you've got to take it across the board. And I reckon, put it this way, I would suggest if they had politicians on the cashless debit card, they would either do two things. They would scrap it in quicker than you can say Jack Flash, or they would improve it to such a point that it actually worked. And what I mean by that is they would have proper technology, they would have the consent, because I don't reckon politicians are going to cop having their consumer laws stripped off them, or their human rights stripped off them. You see what I'm getting at? They would either do two things. They'd either scrap it entirely and throw their hands up in horror,
Yeah,
or they would improve it to such a point and make it a choice.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
We'd like to put you on this card. Do you consent? No, I don't. Okay, goodbye.
yeah,
Never
that's
to be
it.
heard of again. Do you
Yeah,
see what I'm getting at?
yeah,
They
yeah.
would improve the systems, the processes, the complaints mechanism, because there's no complaints mechanism basically now
No,
anyway. So
yeah.
that it would improve. You wouldn't know it as the cashless debit card that we know it these days.
In which case, why would you want it? Why do you need it?
Well,
If you
but that's it. That's it. And the other thing is, and the argument is that basically, if they put the money that they give into for each and every card and to manage
yeah,
each and every card holder's account
how much,
into the Centrelink payment system,
yeah,
job seekers would be on a living wage, age pensioners would be receiving a decent amount because it's hard to live on the age pension these days and
yeah,
everything like that. Other than the money that they're wasting on that, if they actually put that money into the payment system, it
yeah,
would benefit the economy because basically what happens, most Centrelink recipients spend what they get.
yeah, exactly true.
And
And
that
there's a,
keeps businesses going who actually employ staff who then spend money and it does the whole monetary,
well,
cycle.
we did this during the global financial crisis. We
Yes.
through that. And Ruddy, that was Ruddy's term. And they gave out all these bonuses to people because they knew that they would spend them. And therefore, the economy kept going. We came out the best globally on that one. And our treasurer at the time, Wayne Swan, won some awards in that regard as well, as
Yeah.
far as I remember. Look, it's, I don't know why they make it so hard, really. I mean, it's not bloody rocket science. You treat people well, people respond well,
Mm.
right? By that, I mean, you show a little bit of kindness. You look after your workers properly, and they will work twice as hard for you.
Mm.
Now, there was an example of this, some young bloke, I can't remember his name, in America, but now he's a Harvard study. He paid all his all his employees a minimum of a livable wage, right? He paid them all a livable wage. And everybody, said, oh, this will never work, you'll go broke, blah, 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 blah. Well, he's broken all records and his business is booming. His people are really happy. They all own their homes or in the way of owning their homes. And his model is now taught in Harvard.
Mm.
Okay? It's simple, but we have so many greedy tyrants, for lack of a better word, that are leading. Not good people. We need good people. Because there's no need for this. There really isn't. I mean, you show a bit of kindness, bit of respect, you get it back tenfold. And us as Australians, that's who we are at the core. We help ourselves, we help our mates, we care and we do the right thing. So punishing people is never, do you want a life of crime and abuse and violence? And is that what you want? Because that's what you're creating. If the money that they spent on Indu, on the setup and all the crap that's gone along with it, if they had have put a portion of that into public housing, into rehabilitation centres, so that those people with addictions would actually get some real help and possibly recover and get back into society and be a productive member and go to work and earn a living and do what everybody else is doing, right? People, people that are homeless, if they have somewhere to go, somewhere for their kids to lay their head and feel safe, and they don't have to not eat for 2 days of the week so that they can meet their rental commitments, then they're going to thrive as well. The kids are going to be happy. The parents are going to be happy. You know, you're going to reduce the domestic violence or the kids suffering. And it's the kids that always suffer. I don't care what it is. At the end of the day, it's the kids that bear the burden of adults' mistakes.
Absolutely.
The kid that sits there and is cowering in the corner while his mum's been beaten, you know, from pillar to post, or, you know, the kid that sits in a classroom that's got holes in their shoes and in their clothes and everybody else looks normal, you know, and they're sitting there like that, or that have got Vegemite sandwiches while other kids have ham, you know, all of that impacts, right?
Mm.
And at home, the kids, you know, they have balance and care, and that I've raised kids as a single mum, and they're all happy, professional people contributing to society. I'm about to be a grandma again, and
Oh, congratulations.
yeah, I'm excited. And it's, you know, show some love, so show some respect, show some kindness, give a little. It don't hurt. Don't rob the people that are actually helping you get your dollars, more numbers at the end of your bank book. Don't rob them. Look after them. Even give them a bonus here and there to say, thanks, dude. I appreciate you standing there watching those can tops just go past you and making sure that each one's right. You know, you're brain dead doing it, but I appreciate that you do that, because if you didn't do that, I wouldn't have a final product. You know, let's change this. So much doom and gloom and so much, and it's just greed, unnecessary greed.
Yes, and on that note, we're going to stop the interview there. But I want to end on that note that, you know, be kind to one another. Look
Yes.
after one another is basically what you're saying. If we look after, you know, our families, if the government actually decided to genuinely look after its citizens, including its most vulnerable citizens, we'd have a healthier nation, and the children also have far more opportunity. But
yeah,
so, and it's a nice way to end, to say, look after, be kind to one another, look out for one another. So I want to thank you very much. It's been a fascinating discussion. And this is Desley Casey from Reality Bite saying thank you. Hope you